Hey, I'm olajide Paris, and in this video, I'm going to be walking you through how I created an epic cinematic cue using Subculture by UVI. Now, full disclosure, UVI has sponsored this video, but all the thoughts and opinions on this library are my own, and they have not influenced any of the content in this video. Now, there will be links in the description below to this product where you can find it online, as well as my free composer's gear guide. Without further ado, let's jump in. So first of all, here's the track. Okay, cool. So now let's break this down bit by bit, starting with the pulses. So yeah, the first patch is this kind of bass piano. And you can see that I have these pulses grouped to a bus. I have them outputting to a bus, and I have this filter sweep, which is a nice way of adding interest at the very beginning. Yeah, and you can hear how as the filter opens up, you hear more of that top end, and then one more from Subculture. Cool. Next section, some more pulses, and these ones are going to a different bus, and I will explain why in a moment. First one is tempo run. There's that. These are all single notes, so I won't play the whole thing. Then we have minor. And aggression. And like some other products in UVI's catalog, these have multiple sources. So in some cases, I've duplicated them and I've turned off sources so I can have more control over the mix. So here I have a compressor. All of these three pulses are routed to a bus, and the bus is compressed, and the sidechain is controlled by these hits here, so that they can duck down and really allow the hits to come through. So we can first watch what that looks like. And if I turn the hits on, you'll see how this compressor is interacting with the hits. So that's just there to add some space by ducking the pulses down so that the hits can really shine through the mix. And when you have a really busy composition like this, it helps to do things like that to clear things up. Yeah, next I'll just go through the hits. So we have two patches here. We've got the Gladiator patch. And I've added some compression on that to really even it out and make it very impactful. And then we have the menacing hits patch, also from Subculture. And these are twice compressed, first on the instrument level and then also on the group level. And I've added some low cut here so that we can allow the pulses and the percussion and the other things to hit through there. Next, percussion section. We've got tempo run. Now, this is a good example of what I was talking about earlier, where I have two of the same patch, and I've isolated different elements so that I can treat them differently in the mix. So that's the first element, just some compression. And they have slightly different levels as well. And then we've got another patch also from Subculture. So that's just the second source. Whereas I think you saw earlier on, I was using the other two sources as a pulse. And together they sound like this. And feeding into a bus with another compressor and some passive EQ. Next section, we have some more pulses. This one is called lines. Yeah, very cool patch. And military scene. And on this one, I've used UVI shade EQ to give some really cool panoramic effect. So this is what it sounds like without it. And it already sounds cool, but it's very direct. And with this preset, it just gives it a better sense of space and dimension and helps it sit in the mix a little bit better. Next up, we have our hits. Starting with the gritty hit, which is from Subculture. And these are just kind of used as a transition to the next section. Really big, beefy bram there. In the orchestra, we have the military scene strings. So we saw this up here as the pulse. Again, I have used the mixer to isolate just the orchestral part, which is this low strings kind of stab pattern. So moving on, we've gone over these before. We have our hits again. All of this is the same. We have added these synth parts here, and this comes from, not from Subculture, but from Energy, which is available as its own instrument or part of Vintage Vault 4, which there will be a link to in the description below. And this patch sounds like this. And I'm using some EQ to narrow the bandwidth, so it's really just in this range here. And then we've got kind of the opposite of that, which is Chroma Synth, also part of Vintage Vault 4, or as its own product. Together, that section sounds like this. And moving on to the penultimate section, we have the patch minor from Subculture. Just another pulse. And then we have some additions from the Augmented Orchestra, which is a product I worked on, recorded in Budapest with UVI. Link in the description below. This is the string sustain unison, which is controlled by the mod wheel. So we've got a nice melody there with the strings and the brass. Again, the brass sustain also from Augmented Orchestra. And one of the challenges here is when you have so much going on, again, to get things to come in and out, a lot of automation and different gain staging management is needed. And one of the ways that I dealt with this here is that, yes, so here I have these percussion tracks that are sidechained to the Gladiator to Menacing Hits, which is these guys here. So anytime these hits come in, the percussion ducks down, just like our pulses did here. And then I think I've got something similar here. Yeah, where these synths here are also being controlled. Their sidechain inputs being fed by the hits. And then similarly with the pulses here as well, I've got those output on a group. And you can see that there's two compressors. One's grayed out now. That's because the other one earlier on is being fed by something else. So here, it's earlier in the piece, it's being fed by bus 11, which is the hits. And then here I have another compressor, and it's getting its sidechain from basically the melody. So the strings and the brass are controlling the sidechain input of the pulses, which are otherwise taking up a lot of bandwidth, and that allows the melody to shine through despite there's all this pulsing going on, and that sounds like this. And you can hear what it sounds like without that if I just turn the compressor off, or I just turn that off. Yeah, you can already hear how it starts to get lost in the mix a bit. Wrapping up, we have some swells. This patch is from Subculture. So obviously this one I have just low pass on. I just want to fill out the low end. Here's more of a mid-rangey kind of patch. This one's complete opposite. This is just a high pass filter on there with some compression. And then finally, Quake from Subculture. And the final patch is Abyss Swells from Subculture. Just a nice kind of final hit swell. Pulses, we have two new pulses, and I've dealt with them a little bit differently again. And low pulse rhythm. And here we have our string chords from Augmented Orchestra. So this is basically a patch where we recorded the entire orchestra performing a variety of chords. We've got major chords and minor chords in different inversions, and we have some other chords as well. And with this here, I've got a compressor that is fed by one of the pulses so that you can see you can see it bouncing, and that's because it's being controlled. It's being it's having its input fed by the pulses, which sound like this together. Just to help the pulses kind of pop a little bit more out of the mix. Last but not least, I'll go over the transitions as promised. This comes from Subculture. Just a nice little hit. And that one as well, also from Subculture. Nice little bass pulse. And then finally this stomp hit. which I have running through an instance of Relayer using the Quarter Groover preset, also made by UVI, a link in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this gives you an idea of how you can use Subculture in your own music. It's a really great toolkit for cinematic composers, whether you're a film composer or game composer or trailer composer. It's got a little bit of everything for everybody. There's a lot of pulses. There's a lot of kind of gritty stuff. There's brams. So I think no matter what type of work you're doing in terms of virtual hybrid kind of work, this is a great product to look at. Again, links in the description below to the product and other products that I used. Also, grab my free Composer's Gear Buyer's Guide in the link below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.